Ms. Rosalind Njogu. Today, Kenya has quite a vibrant diaspora community, courtesy of the work you're doing at the State Department for Diaspora Affairs. Could you share your lessons learned so far, building a new institution like that, a new State Department? And what challenges and opportunities have you faced as a woman in leadership, and broadly, in your experience as a role as a PS?
Wow, that sounds like with the aid of diagrams and examples explained.
Yes, explain. 40 marks.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
A quick story is to note that I am an accidental diplomat, and I'm beginning to wonder if there is such a thing as a traditional diplomat. In the sense that I was appointed as PS. I just found myself in the State Department for Diaspora Affairs creating something. So in many ways, I am also just an entrepreneur. I'm a lawyer and academic by profession, and I am doing what I think is one of the most exciting jobs that that one could have in public service. So you are right, Kenya does have one of the most vibrant diasporas anywhere. You just need to hop onto social media and attempt to start a war with a Kenyan, or you just need to, jump onto TikTok and just start a small fight with Kenyans. And then the army, the Avengers will assemble. And a big part of that is just that external part of our people who are out there living, working, doing fantastic things. So, the lessons I have learned in setting up a new State Department, firstly, I don't advise it. In the sense that it is not for the faint of heart. Governing is tough work. Running a department is tough work. The job of being a PS is the hardest job I have done so far. It's the hardest job that I have done so far. It is probably also the most fun job that I have done so far. But building something from scratch is difficult on various levels. You have to conceptualize and help people to dream about what is this diaspora. You have to debunk myths. You have to help people have a broader understanding of what is this diaspora. You have to ask the world, especially in places where in many countries, state departments or ministries for diasporas do not exist. So you're creating new spaces, you're creating new ideas, you're creating new imaginaries. And you're telling people that this distinctive group of people is so important that we need to actually create an entire government infrastructure, bureaucracy, resources, but also approaches to serving them. And then you sort of, the way governments operate with their diaspora sort of happens on a spectrum, right? So you have the governments on the one side, such as ours, that are, embracing and are looking to support diaspora and really open. And you have on the other hand, and over the years of, countries, they have sort of changed how they think about diaspora. But you have on the other hand, regimes that think of diaspora as dissidents, right? So why are you out of your country? What are you really doing here? We ought to track you. We ought to find out what it is that you're doing. So helping the national conscience around what is a diaspora, what we ought to think about people who live abroad, how they help us brand our country, what the kind of things that they do. So there's that whole sort of academic or conceptual work, sort of framework. Then you have to do the nuts and bolts stuff of just setting up a department, hire people, right? So figure out, where do I find office space in this, in this city? How do I begin to hire people? How does one set up? I don't mean to trigger you, Dr. Kosgei, but how do you set up an establishment, right? And how do you begin to put people in place to sort that out? How do you establish a policy framework that governs some of these things? And then if you run a department that sort of does infrastructure, so if you're doing roads, or if you're doing I'm thinking about infrastructure or hard stuff. I don't know what hard stuff is. it's a little different because it's not necessarily people-facing in a very citizen services kind of way. But you have the challenge now of offering services, delivering services, and also in a very mother-hen kind of way, beginning to bring a very fragmented diaspora that sits globally together. You have to communicate to the Kenyans in St. Helena, you have to communicate to the Kenyans in the UK, the more established older diasporas, you have to communicate to the Kenyans who are now in sort of smaller places like Malta or the newer diasporas, and you have to sort of bring them together. And then you have the challenges of, you know, social media is a fantastic thing. It's also one of the things that might destroy people, right? So I find that diaspora often are more engaged in stories, including politics, whether negative, positive, fake news, real news, more than Kenyans in Kenya. So by the time we have dealt with the situation here and come up with memes, diaspora is still processing this story. So in many ways, you are constantly communicating with and dealing with a group of people that's fragmented, that's across the world, that you have to create channels of communication with, that you have to support, and that you have to work to build a trust situation with them. Diasporas, and not just the Kenyan diaspora, but diasporas around the world tend to have a trust deficit with their governments. For various reasons. We find it across the world. People who serve in the capacity that I do will usually say diasporas don't trust governments. So you have to do the very, very hard work of building trust, and so on. So, and maybe one of the other challenges and really sort of opportunities is just the changing dynamics of the changing dynamics that globalization brings, right? Increasingly, we are a smaller and smaller village, right? So the things that are happening in Sierra Leone will impact Kenyans in Kakamega. Okay, the things that are happening anywhere impact, and we are also, as a society, increasingly experiencing everybody's life and everybody's trauma in real time together. If you think about social media, for example, if there is something happening in Nairobi, we are witnessing that, let's say on social media, let's say when you have demonstrations, everybody is witnessing that in real time. And so there is a sense in which a lot of the work that you have to do, you have to almost do it immediately in the full glare of everybody. And so there's been sort of that, those challenges. And of course we can speak about, you know, existing challenges around what new growths of diasporas mean in terms of things like non-traditional, and when I say non-traditional diasporas, a lot of our older diasporas went away to different countries to study and then sort of stayed and settled, right? So in many ways they were a fairly well-established, well-connected diaspora in the sense that they had roots in the society, they had money, they had careers, and so on. But now we have, for the last maybe 10 years, we've had a diaspora that has been growing also because of labor migration and labor mobility. And that introduces new aspects and new vulnerabilities that you have to work on. So that probably is one of the biggest challenges that I have to deal with every single day, whether it is people who find themselves poorly treated in countries where they find themselves employed, whether it is people who thought they were migrating for work but end up being victims of human trafficking, and so on. And so these are some of the challenges. But maybe let me say...
In summary, hopefully.
In summary, okay. Very well. So in summary, let me say, navigating a career path that asks for brings together a number of the things that I have learned over the years, but also requiring that I learn new skills every single day. Has meant that I need to be very open, has meant that I need to lean hard on the technical officers that I find at the ministry who are seasoned foreign service officers, for example, to help me figure out how do you navigate negotiations, for example, bilateral conversations, and that kind of thing. So there's been a need to lean both up and to lean both down and to look up as I've navigated over the last 2.5 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Makofi for the PS, who says she's not so new, but new to the job. And there's a lot to learn. And by the way, a lot of us are looking up to you too. So, yes, pressure on you.
The question is what would I advise young women, I think, who are working towards diplomacy and leadership in diplomacy? I'd say patriotism is very visible. And it is truly the thing that drives you. If you're making decisions and working as you think about the flag flying behind you, there are lots of things that you can do. With very little resources, with few people, but if you're truly, truly patriotic, I think there is a lot that you can do. It's not something that can be taught. Sometimes it can be taught. I think patriotism is mostly caught. But it is something that we can ingrain in ourselves. And then, because if the whole job of a diplomat is actually to represent national interests and the interests of whoever has sent them. So if you're aligned as far as patriotism is concerned, then absolutely. Okay. That is the first thing that I would say. Okay. The second thing I would say is move with boldness. It's not a game of timidity or what. You've determined this is the path I want to take. You pursue it with relentlessness, because there's a lot of distractions, and you really have to determine this is what I want to do, and go for it with a lot of relentlessness. I was going to say, when I was in law school, one of the things I desired truly, and this goes to my last point, one of the things I desired truly when I did international economic law, international trade law, I remember having fancy thoughts that, oh, wouldn't it be lovely at some point to ever sit at these negotiating tables at the WTO or wherever and actually just listen to Kenya's position or be able to be part of the team that advances Kenya's position. Last year, when I was leading the negotiation for the Kenya-Germany mobility agreement, I had such a moment to sit and go like, my goodness, sometimes even prayers and dreams that are not said out loud, that are just whispered, come true.
Come true.
So, boldness. If you have an opportunity, go for it. If the door closes, kick it open, or use the window, as we have said. And the final thing I would say is be useful. We've talked about getting an education. We've talked about working hard. But if you want to progress, be useful. Okay. If I have to report to my boss, then let me be giving them the kind of information they need to make a decision to help push the agenda forward. Everybody looks for somebody who's useful to work with them. So be useful, be patriotic, be bold, and pursue it relentlessly.
I love that. I love that. Round of applause. Woo. I feel like the luckiest person. I feel like they're talking to me. I don't know about you, but I've absorbed all the knowledge. Thank you so much for your time.